We're heading to the picturesque Isle of Wight, a place known for its stunning landscapes and rich history. But beneath its idyllic surface, a growing crisis is driving residents to their breaking point. Furious locals are now speaking out against ferry companies they accuse of holding them to ransom, with some residents even contemplating leaving the island altogether. How has life on the Isle of Wight become so unbearable that some wish they had never moved there? Let's uncover the harsh realities behind the escalating ferry costs and unreliable services that are blighting the lives of islanders. For many, the Isle of Wight represents a peaceful retreat from the hustle and bustle of mainland life, but for the island's residents, the dream is turning into a nightmare. The soaring cost of ferry travel, combined with erratic service, has left locals feeling trapped and isolated. Imagine being charged £440 for a return ferry ticket to the mainland, a price so steep that many residents now dread the journey. For those living on the island, these ferry services are not a luxury, they are a lifeline, essential for accessing medical care, visiting family, and simply staying connected to the wider world. But as prices rise and services falter, the islanders' frustration has reached a boiling point. Bronwyn Hamilton Brown, a 62-year-old retired head teacher, knows this struggle all too well. She founded the Whitelink Users Group, a campaign that has quickly gained traction with nearly 8,000 members, all united in their fight for fairer ferry services. Bronwyn's story is emblematic of the wider issue. She recounts the difficulties of traveling from her home in Ryde to Portsmouth, especially after the last passenger ferry was cut to 8:20 p.m. during the COVID-19 pandemic. Even Cinderella got to stay out until midnight, she quips, highlighting the absurdity of the situation. But the issue is far from humorous for those whose lives depend on these ferries. The island's limited healthcare services mean many residents must travel to the mainland for treatment, yet the exorbitant costs and unreliable service make this a daunting task. Take Paula Brizzleton, for instance, whose partner, Chris Tunnell, has faced life-threatening health issues, including kidney disease and strokes. They rely on the ferry to reach essential medical appointments in Portsmouth, but the journey is fraught with challenges. On one occasion, their life-saving trip was delayed because there was no room on the ferry for the ambulance. The emotional toll of these experiences is palpable. Paula describes the trauma of being separated from her partner during his hospital stays, all because they couldn't afford the ferry fare to visit more frequently. Despite these challenges, the Whitelink Users Group has secured a £70 cap on fares for patients and a dedicated phone line for those traveling to medical appointments. However, for many, this is just a small consolation in a much larger battle. The outrage isn't confined to individual stories. It's a widespread sentiment shared by many islanders who feel abandoned by the ferry companies. Richard Haywood, a 77-year-old resident and member of the Whitelink Users Group, points out the glaring contradictions in the ferry company's marketing. Whitelink uses the slogan "keeping families together," but you can't share your past with anybody, he says, exposing the disparity between the company's promises and reality. The inflexibility of the ferry passes, coupled with peak time restrictions during events like Cowes Week and the Isle of Wight Festival, leaves residents feeling manipulated and trapped. Even worse, businesses on the island, including hotels and B&Bs, receive better rates than the locals, raising questions about the fairness and ethics of these practices. For some, the situation has become so untenable that they are considering leaving the island entirely. Jackie Devonshire, who moved to the Isle of Wight 5 years ago, is now desperate to leave. The 71-year-old retiree reveals that even specialists are turning down positions on the island because the ferry situation would separate them from their families. "You are completely cut off from society by this stupid stretch of water," she laments, echoing a sentiment that is becoming increasingly common among residents. The frustration has sparked wider action, with people like Simon Jackson, the manager of Utilita Hub, taking the fight to a national level. This petition, launched on August 2nd, has already garnered over 4,000 signatures. Simon, who has lived on the island for over a decade, is pushing for official regulation of ferry prices to prevent what he describes as ridiculous amounts of money being charged. He points out the absurdity of the situation. Despite living only a short distance from the mainland, the high costs and unreliable service mean he rarely sees his family in Surrey and Yorkshire. While some, like Robbie Lane, who runs the Isle of Wight Guru website, focus on finding ways to make the best of a bad situation by offering tips for cheaper travel, it's clear that the issue runs much deeper. The flexible pricing model adopted by the ferry companies has created a system where one family might pay £60 for a crossing, while another pays £300 for the same journey. This disparity is causing significant disruption for both residents and visitors, leading to a growing sense of frustration and helplessness on the island. As we wrap up this deep dive into the Isle of Wight's ferry fiasco, it's evident that this is more than just an inconvenience, it's a crisis affecting the very fabric of island life. The residents are fighting back, but the challenges they face are immense. From skyrocketing costs to unreliable services, the ferries that should be their lifeline are instead becoming a source of immense stress and isolation. As this story continues to unfold, the question remains, will the islanders' voices be heard, or will they continue to be held hostage by the very services they depend on? Stay tuned to the famed journey as we bring you more stories that matter, shedding light on the issues that affect real lives. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest content. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode.